Well, hello there. This is Charles Staley from Target Focus Fitness, and in this presentation I wanted to share with you a really effective way of organizing your workouts, and this can be used for all sorts of applications, as you'll see as I go through this. But this is called the hub and spoke method, and before I go into the system itself, I just wanted to give attribution. I first learned about this idea through the Dynamax company. I attended one of their medicine ball training seminars, and they presented the hub and spoke method as a way to organize medicine ball workouts. And then I subsequently started applying this to other forms of training. So I didn't want to come across as making it sound like I invented or originated the hub and spoke method, and I don't know if the Dynamax folks did either, but in any event, I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about the origins of the hub and spoke method, and also if you need great medicine balls, Dynamax is definitely the company. So with that in mind, let's get a little bit into the concept of how this works. And so in essence, the way that this operates is that you are going to organize each workout with one hub exercise, which is exercise number 1 in this example, and then you will have a small handful of spoke exercises. And in this diagram, those are exercises 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, what happens as you go through the workout is that every other exercise that you do is the hub. So in other words, if you do 9 sets, sets 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 are going to be the hub, and then the even number sets will be the spoke exercises. And this will all become clear in just a moment. But that's how this works. And this is just a really great way to organize training, because it allows you to specialize on one exercise in the course of a workout. So whatever the hub exercise is, half of the sets that you do for the workout will be done for that hub exercise. So as an example, maybe you really want to practice your kettlebell swing, or in this picture you see me doing a double kettlebell swing. So the hub could be a kettlebell swing, and then the spoke exercises could be other strengthening exercises. And I'll give you some examples in a bit. But it just is a way to really focus and or specialize or practice one particular exercise. And it works well in particular if you have an exercise that you really are just trying to improve, so you want to do a lot of sets of those. So it might be that you're trying to improve your push-up or your chin-up or maybe your deadlift or whatever it is. So whatever that one exercise is that you're trying to improve, or that maybe it has more to do with a muscle group that you're trying to build up. So for example, maybe you really are trying to improve your quadricep muscles, so the hub exercise would be a front squat, and then the spoke exercises will be other things that you'll do in that same workout. So specialization is one nice rationale for this. The other is fatigue management, and I will show you how to put these workouts together in such a way that you can perform more work over the course of a workout. And one aspect of this is that the spoke exercises should be as different from the hub as possible. So therefore, by alternating back and forth between the hub exercise and the various spoke exercises, the demands are non-specific. They are different. So for example, if the swings are the hub, and then for example maybe calf raises are one of the spoke exercises, you can see that there's very little overlap, or they're very different muscles and different energy systems. So this system enables you to do a lot of work for the same amount of resources in terms of fatigue. And the other thing, and this is something that's overlooked, but a lot of times novelty is something that is just very, very important. And in fact, in terms of developing more muscle mass, having a novel stimulus is very, very important. And that's why beginners make such fast progress, by the way. If you think about it, if you've never done anything in the weight room, then everything that you do is novel. It's a new stress to your system, and therefore you get a lot of mileage out of it. on the other hand, if you take somebody who's been training for many years, basically there is no novel stimulus. I mean, you might come up with things that are different from what you've done before, but they're probably going to still be similar to something you've done before. So novelty is huge, and it also helps in terms of just staying motivated and just having kind of a new way to organize stuff. It might not really be novel, but it gives the feeling of that you're doing something different, and sometimes that can really be important. So we're going to go through a couple of examples of how to orchestrate this system in your own workouts. And so in this example, we're going to do an upper, lower, or a whole body workout. So basically when you train in resistance training, there's two fundamental categories of how you can organize your workouts. There are upper-lower splits, which means that one workout might be devoted to lower body and the next workout is devoted to upper body, and then you keep alternating back and forth. And then the other common way to do this is to do a whole body workout. And maybe I should have actually labeled this whole body instead of upper-lower, but this will be clear in a minute. So just as an example of how you might do this, the hub exercise will be chin-ups. So we're going to assume that you really want to improve your chin-ups. So that's going to be the focus. That's going to be the hub in this workout. And then the spoke exercises will be lower body movements. So in this example, on set 2, you will do a set of squats. And then on set 3, you come back to chin-ups. And it says 2 chin-ups. So the reason it says that is I'm sort of assuming that chin-ups are difficult for you. Maybe you can do a set of 3 or 4, so every set you do 2 chin-ups. So then set 4 is a set of leg curls, which is the next spoke. Then set 5, you come back to your hub. You do 2 more chin-ups. And then on set 6, you might do a set of lunges. And then these 6 exercises constitute what I would call a round. So in this example, you have 3 spoke exercises, and they are all lower body as opposed to the hub exercise, which is an upper body movement. So this is one round. Once you get yourself through this first 6 sets, you've done a round, and then depending on how much time and energy and so forth that you might have, you might do 2 rounds, you might possibly do 3 rounds, and I would consider 4 rounds to be pretty hefty. If you do 4 rounds, that's 24 total sets, and you have to do a few warm-up sets, and I'll explain to you how to do that in a little bit. So that's not even warm-up sets. So that's probably going to be a 30-set workout. So I would say 2 to 3 rounds, especially in the case where you're using 3 spoke exercises, is probably going to be the norm. So I'll give you another example here of how to implement the hub and spoke. This will be a lower body workout. So this is assuming that everything you do in this workout is lower body. We still want the hub, which in this case is going to be a squat, we still want the hub exercise to be as different as possible from the spoke exercises, but obviously because everything is lower body, we can only make them so different. But for example, I would not make the first spoke exercise a front squat or some other type of squat. I want it to be as different as possible. So in this case, we're going to do back extensions for the first spoke, and then set 3 is back to the squat. Then we go to the next spoke, which is swings, kettlebell swings, for example. Then set 5, we come back to the squat. And then the third spoke is hip thrusts. And so that way, basically, if you look at this, the squat exercise, the hub, is kind of an anterior chain movement. It involves the knees and the quadriceps quite a bit. And then the spoke exercises are all what I would call posterior chain exercises. They more involve the hip. So that way we get the best possible fatigue management as we go through this. Now, if you were to do a lower body hub and spoke workout, then at least in theory, the next workout would be an upper body hub and spoke workout. And I think that might be my next example. No, actually it's not, but let me come back to this just for a second here. So here's the lower body hub and spoke situation. I'm not sure if I have an upper body one coming up, but actually I think I do. So we're going to go through this. So here's another example. Hub and spoke can actually be used not only for resistance training, but you can also use this as a way to mix resistance and cardiovascular drills. So as an example, the hub might be 3 hard minutes on a bike, like a bicycle ergometer in the gym, and then the first spoke might be a set of chin-ups. Then you come back to 3 minutes hard on the bike, and then you come to your next spoke, which might be a set of push-ups. And then we come back to 3 more hard minutes on the bike, and then we'll use our third spoke exercise here as a plank, which is kind of an isometric exercise, and you would hold that plank for 1 minute. So that is 1 round, and this is a way to just mix cardiovascular and body weight or calisthenic type exercises. Now, if I'm not mistaken, okay, so here's another example of a lower upper or a whole body hub and spoke workout where the hub is a lower body movement. So in this case, we're going to assume that you really want to work on your deadlifts, and that might mean that you just want to get stronger on them, so you want to do a lot of sets, or it might mean that you're trying to practice this movement, you're trying to get a lot of practice, so maybe the sets of deadlifts you do are not terribly hard, because you haven't mastered the technique yet. So perhaps you're going to do a set of 5 deadlifts with a moderate weight and you're just trying to get a lot of practice. So then the first spoke would be a push-up, an upper body exercise. Then we come back to the hub, another set of deadlifts. Then the next set is a set of pull-downs, another upper body movement. Then we come back to another set of deadlifts. And then we do a set of curls, arm curls. So as you can see again, the hub is primarily a lower body movement and all of the spoke exercises are upper body. So that way we kind of conserve resources as well as we can. And then I think this is my final example, and this is, this is an upper body workout. So in this case, the bench press will be the hub, and then the first spoke will be rows, which there are a number of ways to do rows, so you can pick whatever one you like. Then we come back to set 3, another set of bench presses. Then the next spoke is a set of pull downs, also a back exercise. Then we come back to set 5, another set of bench presses. And then the final spoke would be tricep push downs. And don't get too focused on the exact examples I'm using. I'm just trying to give you the principles of how you might lay this out. You might not like push downs or any of these other exercises, so you can just kind of take these principles and run with them. So let's go into some questions about programming and how to put these ideas together a little bit. And incidentally, this graphic here I'm just using as kind of illustration for illustration purposes, but this is actually a pretty nice layout of how many reps per set lead to what type of adaptation. So as you can see, 1 to 3 reps per set is primarily a strength adaptation with a small influence on increased muscle mass and pretty much no influence on endurance. Then if you do 4 to 6 reps per set, you're getting a good strength stimulus, a pretty good muscle mass stimulus, and again, no stimulus for endurance. 7 to 10 reps is a fair strength stimulus, a good muscle mass or hypertrophy stimulus, and again, still no stimulus for endurance. Then if we start getting in the 11 to 15 rep range, not very good for strength, a little bit better for muscle mass, and fairly decent for endurance. If we go in the 16 to 20 range, now that's just too light to really be a strength stimulus, but you might have still a pretty good effect on muscle mass and a better effect on endurance. And then if we're up over 20 reps, that ends up being mostly an endurance stimulus. So if you're ever wondering how many reps per set to do in accordance to what your goals are, this is a pretty good chart to kind of put you on track. So let's go through a few of these ideas. The first is warming up, and you're going to probably have to do some warm-up sets for these. And I'm going to skip back here just for a moment just to give you an example. Let's look at this example right here in terms of doing a warm-up. What I recommend for people is that you do your warm-ups in the same order that you're actually going to do the circuits in. So for example, for me, if I was doing this, I might start my first set of bench presses with 45 pounds for 10. Then I'm going to do a set of rows with a lightweight. Then I'm going to go back to the bench press and go to 95 pounds and maybe do 5 reps. And then I'll do my first set of pull downs with a lightweight. And then I will do my third set of bench presses, and I might use 135 for 5. And then I'll do my first set of light push downs. And then I'm going to come all the way back to the bench press, and I might do 185 for 3. And that'll probably be my last warm-up for the bench press. And then I might do one more set of rows, a little heavier, another set of pull downs, a little heavier, and maybe another set of push downs, and then I'm ready to go. So that's how I would do this in terms of the warm-up. What's important to realize is you may very well need more warm-up for certain exercises than others. So just take that into consideration. For example, on this example, I personally bench press about 265, 270 pounds, so I would need more warm-ups on that than I would for something like tricep pushdowns, where I would probably only need 1 or maybe 2 sets of warm-ups for that. So basically, if you need less warm-up for one exercise than the other, just kind of take your sets accordingly, and they don't have to be all symmetrical. In other words, you don't have to do equal number of warm-up sets for every exercise, but you should follow the same order that you are going to use in the actual workout itself. So coming back to this, the next question, and I talked about this just briefly earlier on, but what are the ideal number of spoke exercises? Now, looking at both extremes, if you only used one spoke, then it's really not hub and spoke at all, because first of all, no wheel has only one spoke, and then the more realistic definition is that you're really just doing supersets if it's only 2 exercises in total. So it really, I would say you would need at least 3 spokes. And but if you get a little bit crazy, so for example, if you have 5 spokes, I think it just ends up getting a little bit out of hand, because that's a total of 6 exercises, and that's kind of complicated and time-consuming to do your warm-ups for. And also, if you're just doing one workout for upper body or lower body, you don't need that many exercises to really cover everything. So I would say most of the time when I use this, I use 3 spokes, on rare occasions 4, but I've never used 5 in my practice. So you're welcome to experiment with things, of course, but I would say probably 3 spokes and possibly 4. So that's going to be the ideal number of spokes for most applications. Next, we come to the ideal number of rounds, and this partially depends on the spoke. So in other words, if you have a lot of spoke exercises, the workout it's going to take longer to do a round, and therefore you won't be able to do as many rounds. What I find typically is that when I use 3 spokes, we will typically go through 3 rounds. And that ends up being, if I'm not mistaken, 18 total work sets, meaning after your warm-ups, that ends up being 18 total sets. And that is a pretty good number of sets to do for a workout. So I would say, generally speaking, 3 rounds, but maybe 2, maybe 4. But I would say 3 is the number of rounds that I find works in most applications. Now, how many reps per set on each exercise? I think I've already explained that with the diagram here to the left. However, I want to make a point that some exercises are more amenable to low repetitions. The deadlift would be an example of that, and others are more amenable to high reps. And push-ups, for those people who are fairly strong, push-ups might be an example of that. So it's okay for different exercises in your hub and spoke workout to have different reps. So for example, you might be doing sets of 3 on the deadlift, and then your spokes might be sets of 15 on the push-up and sets of 12 on the curl, and so forth and so on. So don't feel that each spoke exercise needs to be done for the same number of reps. And also, ideally, I find that it works better if you have a fair amount of contrast between how many reps you do on the hub and how many reps you do on the spoke. So typically I like the hub exercise to be either low rep, and then the spokes are high reps, or vice versa. One example would be if you're doing kettlebell swings as the hub, that would be for high repetitions, relatively high. And what I mean by high is could be anywhere between 10 and 20. And then the spoke exercises would be kind of lower repetition exercises. And by doing that, you make better use of your energy, and you'll be able to do more total work. Now, there's a couple of ways to look at rest intervals. I usually have people self-regulate their rest. In other words, I typically don't train on a stopwatch or have clients do that. On the other hand, if you are trying to get, for example, as a goal 3 rounds, then what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of look at the clock as you go through the workout and kind of self-assess your pace and how you're doing. So, and this depends on the exercise, and it also depends on the difficulty. So if you are doing heavy sets of 3 on the deadlift as your hub, you need to be fairly recovered from the last exercise before you take that on. So keep in mind, this is a scenario where you're going to do multiple sets. So on the hub exercise, let's say you have 3 spokes and you're going to do 3 rounds. That means you're going to do 9 sets of that hub exercise. So if your best deadlift is 300 pounds, you don't want to take 295 for sets of 2 for your hub, because maybe you could do that for 1 set of 2, but you're not going to do it for 9 sets of 2. So just keep in mind how many total sets on that hub you're going to do before you determine what the weight load will be and how many total reps you're going to do with it. But going back to rest intervals, I would self-pace this just with the understanding that you don't want to be in the gym all day long. But I have found that, again, 3 spoke exercises and then 3 rounds with warm-ups can usually be done in an hour or maybe an hour and 10 minutes. So that seems to be the best way to go. Now, you're probably looking for a more concrete answer. How much rest between sets does that usually add up to? Usually 2 to 3 minutes. So if I had to just give you a ballpark idea, roughly 2 to 3 minutes between sets. Now, progression is the last issue here, I think, on my list. And what this means is, we're talking about progressive resistance exercise here. So that means when you go to repeat any given workout, you want to go a little bit heavier or use a little bit more repetitions. So what I recommend that people do is that rather than trying to add more weight to every single workout in the system each time you do it, typically what will happen is that, let's say you're doing 4 total exercises in one of these workouts. Typically, one of the exercises is going to be the hardest exercise, and another exercise will be the easiest exercise for whatever sets and reps you're doing. So I would recommend the next time out, do not add any weight at all to the hardest exercise, whatever that might be, and then add weight certainly to the easiest exercise. And that's kind of how I would go. And keep in mind that progression does not mean that you have to make each workout more difficult than the last. It just means that you need to see an upward trend from week to week, from month to month. You're handling more and more difficult challenges. So it might be that one exercise you don't progress at all for 2 or 3 workouts because it's difficult. And then maybe the 4th time around you either increase weight or increase repetitions or both. So you do want to have gradual progression whenever you are implementing this. Keep in mind, if you add 5 pounds to an exercise every week for for a year, that's a 260-pound increase. And obviously, that's not realistic and it's not sustainable. So very small increases really are what you want to be doing. And I mentioned this just briefly, but again, this progression does not mean you have to increase weight. It might mean that for 2 workouts you use the same weight, but just increase the reps per set by 1 or 2 each time, and then maybe the 3rd or 4th time you add weight. So that's kind of how I would treat progression. So I hope that was useful. If you're not already on the site, I'd urge you to come over to Target Focus Fitness and sign up to my free newsletter here, and that way we can kind of keep you up to date on what's new, and I'll send you a cool little free report called the 7 Secrets of Functional Fitness just for doing that. So once again, hope that was helpful, and I'll see you next time.